to Mike Brown's credit, he managed to step out of his own way enough to recognize that the old ways of running the Bengals, the way that, his father did for the longest time, and that he tried to do at first, it's not working. Welcome to the jungle, Bengals fans. I'm Kyle Phelps, and Mike Brown starts to suck a lot less from here on out. I mean, don't get me wrong. Even after Marvin Lewis began the process of wrestling control away from Mike Brown, Mike still fell back into old habits. There was cheapness, there was not wanting to bring in free agents. Just ask Carson Palmer about that one. Although I'm not entirely sure I agree with all of his points. But even to this day, he still does a few things that make you kind of stand back and shake your head like, dude, why? That doesn't make any sense. In the last episode, we talked about what might have been Mike's finest hour, which was the Carson Palmer trade. I definitely recommend watching that video and the other 2 episodes in the series if you haven't watched them yet. But it wasn't until the rise of the Blackburn-Tobin era that he learned what was possibly the most important lesson of his career. But before we get into that, I'd just like to ask that you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. It really helps my channel grow, and it helps you know when all of my content comes out. So, y'all remember the Houday Revolution from episode 2? Among other headline-making protests and everything like that, the ultimate movement that they're well known for representing is the decades-long call for Mike Brown to hire a goddamn general manager. Seriously, you guys know how many teams in the NFL don't have one? It's 2. The Bengals and the Patriots right now. Back in the day of, during the Houday Revolution, there was also the Washington Potato Skins. But, I mean, since then, they've hired that Grudengate guy in 2009, and now they got Martin Mayhew, so that's no longer true. Now it's only the Bengals and Patriots which don't have a general manager. And by the way, for what it's worth, those 2 teams have one more thing in common. They both employ a director of player personnel. For the Patriots, that's currently Matt Groh, and for the Bengals, that's Duke Tobin. Technically, Tobin was promoted to the role in 2002, and to be fair, that's about when the Bengals started learning how to draft well, how to build a team, and, in the last episode, we discussed that he and Marvin found a way to influence Mike Brown enough to give up some power and built, in the opinion of many, a Super Bowl caliber team in 2005. Like seriously, if Carson Palmer doesn't get hurt, well, that's going to be another video, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, I think the success of that 05 team allowed Mike Brown to entrust Duke Tobin more and more as a de facto general manager. Throughout his rise and building the Cincinnati Bengals into the aughts and then even the 2010s, he started garnering a lot of attention from other NFL teams wanting to hire him to be their general manager. And you know what he said, by the way? He said nah to all those other NFL teams. He specifically cited loyalty to the Bengals as a big reason, the primary reason why he didn't have any interest in moving anywhere else. Loyalty, if you didn't already know this about Mike Brown, is his buzzword. As soon as he said that, I think Mike Brown tried to adopt the guy. Honestly. Tobin and Marvin paved the way for Mike Brown trusting people other than himself to help run this team. And that right there, I think, is a big reason why the Blackburns have been able to make such a major impact ever since the Carson Palmer trade. Now, if you don't already know who the Blackburns are, they're the clan of Mike's daughter, Katie. Katie is married to Troy Blackburn, who has been with the Bengals since 1997, actually went to Duke University. Their children, Mike's grandchildren, Elizabeth and Caroline, have been working for the team over the last couple of years as well. We're going to talk more about their impact in the final episode after this, but suffice it to say that this is and always has been a family business. So, the Bengals lucked out, and one of the things that Mike Brown actually seems to be really good at doing is raising a really football-smart family. But anyway, I digress. This episode is really about the impact of Duke, Katie, and Troy on the Cincinnati Bengals. Like those 3 were officially all brought onto the Bengals front staff in the late 90s. Now, it did take some time for their impact to be both felt and recognized, but by the 2010s, I think everyone knew that Mike Brown had finally begun the process of forming like a Bengals brain trust outside of his own autocratic leadership. And to be clear, Duke Tobin absolutely deserves credit for some of the strides that Bengals have made with drafting in the 2000s, as well as bringing in coaching talent after a certain point. Like, the Bengals' philosophy seems to have always been, and still to this day kind of is, that too many voices in the room is not necessarily a good thing as far as decision-making goes. But I think Troy, Katie, and Duke proved that some extra voices, other than just Mike Brown and Mike Brown's alone, definitely is. And to Mike Brown's credit, he managed to step out of his own way enough to recognize that the old ways of running the Bengals, the way that, his father did for the longest time, and that he tried to do at first, it's not working. Really, that's the ultimate legacy, I think, of Mike Brown, guys. There are all-time greats, for sure, like Paul Brown, Jerry Jones, the Rooney family, guys that can just be these legendary, larger-than-life figures in a football organization, running the team with an iron fist. But not everybody can be Paul Brown, right? I mean, the way Mike Brown opened himself and the team up to like a committee system in lieu of the previous dictatorship that he was trying to continue himself in the footsteps of his father, Paul Brown, that right there, I think, should show you that Mike Brown's legacy should deserve some redemption. Things got started going in the right direction with Marvin Lewis when he was brought in, but I think Marvin was just the precursor for the way that the team is run today. I mean, he's not even on the team anymore, and they're being run way better than they were before Marvin got here. A team with a legitimate shot to win a Super Bowl relatively soon. And that would have sounded completely unthinkable when I was growing up, guys. There's no way that I would have even considered that as a possibility when I was growing up. But what do you think, everyone? We've still got one more episode to go in this Mike Brown series, and it's basically just going to be an episode going over how all of this turmoil and all of this change has finally led to a period of prosperity. And, maybe that was a big part of Joe Burrow, but honestly, even with Joe Burrow, if Mike Brown doesn't change his colors, none of this happens, right? But for now, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Am I giving Mike Brown too much credit when, frankly, his greatest accomplishment was actually listening to other people for once? Should I be calling for Katie and Troy to lead this great Bengals coup to finally wrestle control away from the terror that is Mike Brown? Or do you agree with me that Mike Brown has finally turned a corner? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll feature the best ones in my next episode, like this one from Mikey Saints Fan for Life, who said on the third episode of my series that Mike Brown sounds like a nightmare and a savior at the same time. To be clear, I'm not at any point saying that Mike Brown is the savior of the Bengals, guys. Honestly, I think all he's done at this point is saved himself from the infamy of being one of the worst owners in professional sports history. I think at this point, his impact has kind of roughly equaled out to being about a neutral one. Like I said, they were bad at first for a long time. The nightmare part of that is true. But all he's done since then, I think, is get his head out of his ass and stop causing problems. To the point where, I can't wait to see him host a Lombardi personally. But still, I think Mike Brown is always going to be known as a better businessman than a football mind. But until we do get to see him host that Lombardi, you can always catch more of what I do at Kyle Phelps92 on Twitter, Facebook.com/ThePhelps, But Fumble Sports, the Battle of Ohio podcast on the Spot Pod Network, and right here if you subscribe. We're about done with this series now, and training camp is less than a month away, guys. So we're going to be switching back into the here and now content, which I'm personally looking forward to, and I hope y'all are too. Till then, I'll leave y'all, as always, with a hootie!